Hello students. Included in this video are the three major essays on the final, and while it goes by pretty fast, you should be able to stop the playback and take notes if you want. Questions was the relationships between workers and employers and how it changed over the course of the 20th century. Of course, you'll remember the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire and its gruesome aftermath. I don't remember if we got to the Ludlow, Colorado massacre, where the Standard Oil Company's Colorado Steel and Iron Company, Coal Company, killed 20 women and children in burning down a miners' camp. But there were also positive things. The work of Miller versus Oregon for women's rights and the protection of railroad workers and seamen, and then the Great Depression made a big difference. Safety was greatly increased in New York after the fire. In the New Deal, the reaction was great. Mr. Roosevelt would try anything, including helping unions, in order to try to pull the nation out of its decline. Some of the benefits were the end of child labor and creation of minimum wage, protection of the right to unionize, and in this same period, the Second World War comes along, which really takes us out of the Depression. And in that time, women and African Americans receive a considerable boost in their employment opportunities. Here we see the old Fisher Motor Works sit-in with a band of entertainment for the workers who are locked in there until a contract is agreed with General Motors. After the war, people were just friendly to unions because they seemed to be causing trouble. It did reach the highest point of union membership in 1955. 35% of industrial workers were organized in unions, but it's been in decline ever since. Although there have been noted gains in the 60s for the African Americans and women through the Office of Economic Opportunity and the laws for equal pay for equal work, OSHA, and even the Environmental Protection Agency. The 1946 railroad strike put Mr. Truman on the opposite side of unions, a rare situation for a Democratic candidate. Mr. Reagan never left any doubt about his feeling about unions, and it was very much accepted that when he broke down the PATCO, Professional Air Traffic Controllers Union, people thought those people were overpaid anyway. And with deregulation of banking and thrifts, junk bonds, and so forth, the laissez-faire atmosphere that allowed for booming and busts of the economy did not do particularly well for laborers. Reduction in force and tightening up, increasing productivity meant that the worker was not guaranteed a job. The next question has to do with war and the position of women and African Americans in society. Rosie by Norman Rockwell. Only about 2 million of the 8 million women that were added to the workforce in the Second World War were actually in war manufacturing industries. In the First World War, women rarely had a chance to work in the war industry, but it did bring jobs for African Americans who rushed north to fill jobs in Detroit, Motown, Motor City, and created the background for changing social conditions. And the suffrage movement was finally granted as a war measure to reward women for their support. In addition, this rush for jobs meant that there was unrest when people were concerned about the continued value of their property in their neighborhoods. The 15 million people that went to war in the Second World War for the United States in the armed forces came back with a boon, that is, education, training, expectations. The need for stoop labor in the cotton industry disappeared during the Second World War, and veterans of all sorts, even African American vets, were enhanced. Furthermore, women became during the war, the majority of people in higher education, and though they were displaced in the 50s, they have again achieved the status of majority in colleges. Korea and Vietnam had positive and negative sides. For African Americans and for whites, the integration of the armed services in Korea meant for a more effective, more highly motivated Army, Navy, and Air Force. Uh, but there was also a condition of buttering guns. People did not support the war in either Korea or in Vietnam as they had in previous wars. And when there were other wars in which we did not participate, like the Yom Kippur War, which resulted in an oil embargo, our response to that was quite considerable, a depression for quite a while, and an economic downturn. Yes, trouble in the streets followed the racial and tensions over Vietnam. The Gulf War, the War on Terror, has experienced economic shocks, but its greatest effect has been not on the society as a whole, but on those few people who were in the volunteer services, particularly in the National Guard, who had to undergo long periods of stress away from home and stop-loss periods extending their enlistments much longer than was ever intended when they enlisted. The question regarding technology, this is one we might not have gotten to in your class. How has it contributed to American freedom and prosperity? Consider the three of the following. Well, we'll see. Well, of course, in freedom, this ended the Second World War. During the Gilded Age, railroads were the model for all industry, and the kind of corruption or what we call business practices that were employed by railroads pretty much expanded across the entire economy. Tourism, the automobile, all have made the country different, more prosperous, and allowed parts of the country which were unreachable by water or rail to blossom, to flourish. This is Grand Central Station in the time when diesels and steam were still operating. Well, the robber barons' practices, eliminating competition, monopolizing the various industries, creating trusts, were met by people like William Howard Taft and Theodore Roosevelt. But they did tend to have some results. The economies of scale did go in and brought up a higher standard of living, along with pollution and hectic pace of life that had those people who were on the farm had not been able to attain, and brought many, many people into the cities as industrialization also turned farm manual labor jobs into mechanical jobs. Here we see a picture of the Carnegie Works and Mr. Frick's house. He was one of the Pittsburgh millionaires, Mr. Carnegie's partners. Communication. I like Mr. Carnegie. He was good to libraries, but he also uh, demonstrated the need and the value of communications. He and Mr. J.P. Morgan understood that information was wealth, and they made the best of it. Nowadays, we could not live without our digitized phones and our computer networks, credit cards, etc. Thank goodness they aren't all this size anymore. Military applications. The New Deal did allow atomic weapons to be built during the Second World War, and we've come so far as to have missiles and drones, and the NSA being able to read our mail and hear our telephone conversations. It's not all good. It's not all bad either. Marvelous and retired plane, the SR-71. And for entertainment. With technology comes more opportunities for entertainment. As with the Industrial Revolution, more labor-saving devices give us more leisure time. We do tend to stack it up, however. Do you recognize some of these entertainment and news opportunities? Thank you, and good luck on your test.